Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns is not indicative of future results. Any mentions of rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean that the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal or tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. All rights reserved.
Creating an estate plan is essential. We'll cover that along with the world's worst retirement planning advice so you can avoid it.
And now, how to retire with Fuchs Financial.
The main thing for the majority of the listeners out there who are approaching retirement is I don't want to be surprised.
Helping you build, preserve, and manage your wealth.
You got Roth IRAs, you have individual accounts, and finding the right taxable strategy, that's going to be huge for you.
Welcome in to How to Retire with Ben Fuchs.
Well, an estate plan cannot prevent, illness or death, but it can protect your family from stress and grief and emotional fallout. We're going to break that all down in this episode of How to Retire with Ben Fuchs. Ben Fuchs, How to Retire Blueprint. Listen, Ben, we need your blueprint help because this particular subject is not always the most pleasant, is it?
No, it's kind of morbid. Nobody really likes to talk about the estate plan, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have to get done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like people don't want to talk about their death or their demise or their illness, but you know what? An estate plan is so necessary, and it doesn't mean you have to be a rich guy or a rich couple or whatever. Estate just means whatever you guys have. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you want to decide where your money goes and where your stuff goes when you're not here. And in order for you to do that, you have to put something together, a will, a trust. You can get all kinds of fancy, and we're going to get into some details later. But yeah. I think the idea is making sure that you have control over everything you've worked so hard for your entire life.
Positively. Now, an estate plan really does cover all of it, all the decisions in your life and your death. And I think that's honestly, I think that's what people miss, is that it covers decisions in your life. It's not just decisions that are made after you pass, right? Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. So part of that are things called powers of attorney, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But okay. Your estate plan clarifies how your property is handled after you pass away. It specifies who receives what and when, including any charitable contributions. It designates an executor to manage debts and distribute remaining assets. And in the case of serious illness where you can't decide, the plan allows you to appoint a trusted person to make medical decisions on your behalf, covering preferences such as organ donations or refusing treatment when there's no chance of recovery.
Right. Now, Ben, this is essential to understand because if you are disabled by an accident or by a stroke or something like that, and you are in the hospital, you can't make a decision, you don't really want to have your loved one make that tough decision right on the spot when they're in the midst of the drama and trauma of the situation, right? That's why it's so important to cover these decisions in advance.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, I think the whole idea is you don't want somebody to have the guilt or the concern of making that decision. You want to say, okay, here is what I want. I'm going to make action. I'm going to do that ahead of time. And then once it's done, you can breathe somewhat of a sigh of relief. I think that's the idea. Is that this is one thing that just hangs over a lot of my clients over time. And they get so, worried, oh, I need to do my estate plan. Oh, I need to do a will. Oh, Ben, should I have done a trust? What is the thing that I need to do? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's the power of attorneys that are really important and the healthcare directives that you talked about. So just to kind of fill in, a power of attorney, it designates someone to manage financial accounts and handle bill payments in case of your incapacity. And then also enables a trusted individual to act on your behalf while you are alive but unable to manage those financial affairs. So this happens a lot, and it's unfortunate. But you see, a parent of a client get sick, or in some cases have dementia or other, and then their affairs still need to get handled, even though they're kind of in flux. There's this long transition period between going to a nursing home or finding out what that is, and doctor's visits and everything else. And while that's all happening, someone still has to pay the bills, and we need to make sure that all gets done.
Positively. You're listening to Ben Fuchs of Fuchs Financial, and the show is called How to Retire. And I'm Jackie Selby, your consumer advocate. Just so you know, this is the number to reach out to Ben. It's 800-380-8985. Anytime, sure, the number does work on the weekends. So he's going to make an offer and talk to you about getting in to see him and how important that is in a few minutes. But just so you know, the number, if you're going to be listening to the show or if you want to use it now, 800-380-8985. to reach Fuchs Financial. All right, Ben, as we mentioned, it's not so great and so fun to talk about what happens after your death, but your last will and testament, and I know that you have your things in order because, my gosh, you have a young family. You have a young wife and a young practice and I don't know, your practice is 20 years old, but still.
No. Practice is not 20 years old. I started investing over 20 years ago.
Okay, there you go.
Practice isn't quite that old. Don't get me in trouble now, Jackie.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. But if we look at our family, when we first started with a will, we had our first child, my oldest daughter, whose name I will not mention because wife has asked me not to mention these names.
Yes, that's all right.
So I won't. But when we first, it's like, all right, well, who is going to be the people to take over, caring for our child at that time or children when we are no longer here? And so, it was like, her cousins or, my brother and sister live across the country. So it ended up being her cousins. And we're thinking, they're going to be mad that they were picked. And now that we have three, I think it's like, thank God that's not us. We were so glad that we wouldn't have to take care of another three children, something happens to them. So, but, it's, again, we need to have these things laid out because also, they need to have the assets available to take care of our children. And if they don't have access to that, that's going to be a burden on them. So we need to make sure that everything is taken care of.
You bet. The last will and testament, this specifies how your property is supposed to be handled after your death. So this is one of those things you have to outline, right, for after you pass away, Ben.
Yeah. Who's getting great-grandma's special vase? Who's getting the Mercedes? That specifies how the property is handled. And then also it outlines beneficiaries and the distribution of assets. And again, the clearer you make things, hopefully the less familial problems you'll have after the fact.
Yeah, that is so true. Who's getting grandma's 1989 BMW 325i? I had one. Anyway.
That was very specific. I'm sure there's a picture somewhere.
Car. Oh my gosh. But when you said Mercedes, if you think about it, sometimes people do have a nice little classic car tucked away. And that could be a point of contention. It could also be a vase, as you mentioned. It could also be a plate or silverware. You just don't want that to happen with your things. You don't want your family to have this kind of an argument. Boy,
no question. I can tell you that from our family. My father, so, my dad was young, born in the mid-40s. They told him to save his pennies. And so he did. And so he, to this day, still has 2 milk jugs of pennies. And so when my parents were moving out of their house in Connecticut, I helped them move. And I said, don't worry, I'll hold on to these for you. And my brother and sister may not be terribly excited that I am holding on to the pennies. But what do they say? Like, possession is 9/10 of the law. So sorry, Leo and Sarah, it's mine now. But, I'm sure that won't be a problem. But yes, we want to specify things, make sure there's no arguments. And, if they really want them, they can fight me for them.
That's really cute, Ben, because of course the value of the pennies isn't as great as the emotional value, right, of the jugs of pennies.
It might be $30.
Right. It's just not that thing, but you don't need to have that. How about our healthcare power of attorney? Should we talk about how important that is?
Incredibly important. Again, this is one of those things where you do this so that you don't burden somebody else with it. Right. You name an individual to make healthcare decisions on your behalf, but provides a trusted person the authority to make medical choices when you are unable to do so. And then you tell them, right? Because the other part of that is the healthcare directive, and that allows you to articulate specific preferences for medical treatment in various situations. So providing clear guidance on your healthcare choices, that makes sure that your wishes are followed. So again, you want to have somebody that will make the decisions on your behalf, because otherwise, somebody's not authorized to speak for you, they're not going to be able to. That's a problem. But two, you want to, if you have a DNR, you want to make sure that that is known. And so, the goals are to kind of take these burdens off of people.
Indeed. And you don't want the hospital making that decision, because, they can't. They just need to do what the hospital does and what the healthcare professionals do. And so all that stuff. And it's never too early to get these things down in writing. People think, as you mentioned, that they have all this time. But here we go in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s. And if you don't have a will and a healthcare directive, I mean, come on, we're getting down to the wire.
Well, I mean, let's not cut it that close. But if we think about, if you ever go on a social media site and you're like, oh, this song is 30 years old, which happens to me now. And I'm like, oh, man, that is horrifying.
That hurts.
Right. I don't want to hear that. Don't tell me that. I was perfectly fine not knowing that information. Yes. But the whole idea is that if you don't have a plan, the government will decide for you. And I don't think any of us want any kind of government making decisions with our property. That's not the goal. So in order for you to avoid that, you take ownership.
For sure, Ben. Do you want to talk to folks about getting in to see you? We have a couple of minutes left in the show here.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a few things. Obviously, caveat, we are not attorneys. That's not what we do. I don't have any attorneys on staff. That's very important for us to not do, because I don't have any way of classifying that. But what we can do is, first of all, I am a certified financial planner, professional, certified private wealth advisor, professional. Those both have a lot of information regarding different types of trusts and estate planning involved.
Very good.
And our goal here is that when somebody comes in, we don't necessarily want to write a will for you, but we want to help you figure out what is in your best interest, right? What is the best option for you? Should you have a living trust? Does it make sense to you to have an irrevocable trust? Are you worried about leaving money behind if you were to go into a nursing home? Or are you worried about, leaving money behind to the next generation and controlling that a little bit from the grave? Or do you just want everything dispersed evenly between, the family members that you have, or charities, or whatever that may be? So our goal is to help you figure that out and to make sure that you're going in the right direction, and then to give you recommendations based on the attorneys that you should be talking to. We have a number of people that we work with. And again, it's important for us to be able to make sure that our clients are going in the right direction. So what we have is a how to retire blueprint. And when you think about a blueprint, all a blueprint is a detail on how to make the house, the structure, whatever it may be. But everybody's blueprint is different. Everybody has a different plan for retirement. And so when we're focusing on this, we want to make sure that we're putting all the plans together for your blueprint. It's not it's not an individual thing. It's not a cookie cutter plan. It's a custom strategy for each individual person. People need different income needs. They have different tax planning. They have different family issues. I don't know if anybody has the exact same story. And if they do, I haven't met them yet. And I've met with thousands of people over my last decade. So our goal is to help you get that blueprint, but we can't do any of that unless you come in and give us a call.
Right. And I think it's important also to point out at this time that you're a fiduciary. And what that means is you are having to act in the best interest of the client, not the best interest of your attorney friend, or not in your best interest, not in the best interest of one, investment or another. You act in the best interest of your client. The number to reach Ben, 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985. And as we mentioned, there's really no time like the present, because we are, gosh darn, going on the third month here pretty soon of the new year. So give Ben a call, 800-380-8985. And when we come back, we're going to continue on this checklist of things that are going to propel you forward in the smart way towards your retirement, whether it's online accounts, more estate planning. Don't miss a thing.
He's letting the clock run out on his Social Security to age 70 for maximum benefits. And here comes the Roth conversion. He's locked in for income for life. He's got some outstanding coaching with that annuity plan. He's created his own pension as well, and it looks like he's going to go all the way.
Play your best retirement game. Call Ben Fuchs at Fuchs Financial, 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985.
Hey, welcome back to the show, How to Retire with Ben Fuchs, Fuchs Financial. The number to reach him, 800-380-8985. And yes, he is the creator of the How to Retire Blueprint, 800-380-8985. And we're talking things to do with, well, the really important stuff that nobody wants to talk about, Ben, and that is getting you planned for in case, cross fingers, an illness. You want to keep your loved ones out of financial grief, etc. So that's why we're focusing on that in just a couple of these segments here. How about beneficiary designations and how that works in relation to the will?
Yeah, so this is I think a common misunderstanding for people is that beneficiary designations, they will override your will, and they keep it so that that money does not have to go through probate. I have so many people that come in saying, I don't want my money to go through probate. I don't want to have to, to worry about that or have them, wait 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 months to get the money. I want them to have it when I go away. And so what's important is that when you have a named beneficiary, so if you have your 401k and you have beneficiaries there, typically a spouse or kids or family or, charity, whatever it might be there, they don't need to go through probate to get that money. That will override the will because it is a named beneficiary. All they need is a death certificate. And so we've unfortunately had to deal with that on more than one occasion. But a lot of people will get a trust so that they don't have to worry about going through probate. Meanwhile, in most cases, the majority of your money actually is already going to be avoiding probate.
Very good. Do you want to talk about trust a little bit and trust funds? Provide some control.
Sure. Yeah. So, trusts are one of those things that we could have a whole separate show on. We could go for an hour on that because there are living trusts. There are, living trust basically allows you to control money from the grave in a lot of cases. I've got 3 kids. Let's say my daughter was married. Let's say I didn't like her spouse. And, if I died, I don't want her spouse to get all of our money. And so I might do something where I'm saying, you can get 4 or 5% or whatever's in that trust for the next 5, 10 years. And then after that, you get the rest, in other words, if you're going to get a divorce, go ahead and do it before you get the rest of that money. So that way he doesn't get it, right? So you can do that things. That's something called a living trust. But another reason people will get a trust is so they can basically avoid giving money if they end up going to a nursing home. And a living trust won't help you there because you still have what's called a controlling interest. A controlling interest, if you control that money, it's a different ballgame. Nursing homes, whoever can attach that money later, still has the ability to get to it. So in a situation like that, you might want to create an irrevocable trust. And we see that usually where we have family property, right? You've got a house in Connecticut and a house in Rhode Island, whatever that may be. A lot of people want to make sure that that house continues on to the next generation. They might separate that from their ownership and put that into the trust. The trust is now the owner of that property. As long as it's been there for the appropriate amount of time, nobody can come and get that if there are creditor issues. So there are different things that people need. And then also special needs trusts. There's a different type of trust that people might need, where if you have a child that can't really accept money, if they have over a certain amount of money, it's going to get taken by the government. And so in a scenario like that, you want to have money left for the benefit or care of that child. You might leave it in the special needs trust and have somebody able to disperse that for the benefit of. Now, typically, the attorney that can do a living trust is not the same attorney that does an irrevocable trust and is not the same attorney that does a special needs trust. So you might need to have 1, 2, or 3 different attorneys based on what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. And it's our job to help you find the right one.
Very good. Fuchs Financial with Ben Fuchs, and the show is How to Retire. If you'd like to call Ben, you can do that. The 800 number works on the weekend here, 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985. How about estate planning, saving taxes for heirs? Boy, this is really some good information.
Well, this is interesting because it used to be a much bigger deal, especially in Connecticut. When I got started, 10, 11 years ago, just in pure retirement planning, the limit was like $1 or $2 million in Connecticut, and anything over that was going to get taxed pretty heavily. I think the difference between $2 and $3 million, if I remember, was like $70,000 out of pocket in taxes. So at that point, doing these types of trusts was really, really important. Now, as of 2024, the federal exemption stands at $13.61 million per person generally not affecting most individuals. So if you are a married couple, you got over $27 million that can pass without being taxed. It is not as big of an issue. Now, if you are above that, awesome, give me a call and give me your wallet. But there are 17 states and the District of Columbia impose different estate taxes and inheritance taxes. But, I think ultimately you have to be in a pretty significant type of different tax bracket to really worry about taxes on your estate. And so, which brings me to another point. There are a lot of different people out there that are trying to say, hey, you need to have a trust because you need to work with us so that you can save money on taxes. Guess what? Probably not. Because if you're responding to an ad, you probably don't have enough money to have to worry about having, over $27 million, between the two of you. So, I'm not saying don't go to these things, don't follow those ads, but I am saying, be careful with this. Make sure that you're actually going to save money on your taxes if you're making these kinds of decisions, because it's not always the case.
Very good. Now, I know that we are all pet lovers, nationwide. We all, so many dogs and cats in the family. I feel that way, that my little dog is part of my family. And you can remember your pets and your online accounts, both super important in the planning.
Oh, yeah, no question. So if you have a beloved cat, dog, or other cherished animal, my daughter still remembers when we had a pet. What was it? It's not a gecko. It was like a horned lizard or something. Oh. Anyway, it was cool. Anyway, it was like a secondhand lizard. People couldn't take care of it anymore. We ended up having it. We had it for all 6 months before it passed away because it was kind of at the end of its life. And she still talks about him. Anyway.
Oh, goodness.
But if you have a cherished animal as part of your family, it's important to incorporate their care into your estate plan and clearly outline who will assume responsibility for your pet, whether it's a friend or a local humane society. And then, think about any digital photos or files that you'd like your family to have. It's kind of tough once the stuff is gone and you have passwords. It's not like people are going to be guessing your passwords. Who has access to that stuff unless you give it to them? Also, again, we're going to share those passwords for social media accounts, for your family. If you want to let people know of your passing, or, you'll be dead so you don't care, that's okay too. But again, the idea is to think about all these things ahead of time so that you're able to take action and make sure that those details are clearly communicated while you still have the opportunity.
Ben, I didn't even think about that. That is super important. Think about all the passwords that we have and who's going to be in charge of your Facebook account and your the Instagram account and whether you want a memorial posted on there. All these things can be designated in advance.
Let it be known the answer is no. I think that when I'm gone, this will be my medical directive right here, Jackie, so we can get it. Yeah.
Just delete it.
Yeah, just let it go. Move on. Now I'm gone. It's okay.
Oh, no. Gosh. How often do you suggest that people adjust a plan like this?
So you have to kind of check in every couple of years. This is tough because I remember one time I was meeting with somebody for the first time and they got a letter from their attorneys and it said, hey, you need to come in. We need to make changes to your trust and it's going to cost you $900. Now, that is kind of painful because she had almost no money to begin with. She shouldn't have really had a trust to begin with. It didn't make sense for her plan. So the idea of getting another $800-900 out of her was kind of like, ooh, what are we doing? At the same time, you should be revisiting these plans. Laws do change. So if you created a will 2 decades ago, it's likely that a lot has moved. You might have had children and now have grandchildren or close to it. And so where you want your money to go is likely to change. So it's important to have some kind of regular step up. Also, laws change. You want to have a formal review of your estate plan with a legal professional at least every 5 years to ensure that it does align with your current situation. Now, a lot of people say, I don't want to do that because I don't want to pay the attorney. Well, I can help you. If you have a $5 million estate and you don't want to pay somebody $300, get over it. But if you don't have much, if meeting with that attorney is going to affect your way of living, that's a different ballgame.
Agreed. Now, we have been given the lawyers a lot of winks and nods here. You are not an attorney, but you can direct your clients in the right direction. But on our next segment, we're going to dive right into your wheelhouse and get going on our journey to and through retirement and some of the worst retirement advice. So we for sure don't want people going anywhere. Do you want to take it over from here?
Yeah, no problem. So again, our wheelhouse is definitely not estate planning. I mean, estate planning is a big part of what we do in terms of helping our clients make sure their money is in the right direction. But in terms of setting up that estate, instead of creating the will, in terms of creating the trust and the irrevocable, we don't do that. We don't want to do that. But we have had clients that need that to happen. So we have a network of attorneys that we use. And again, we are fiduciaries. We get no kickbacks from anything except maybe the occasional bottle of bourbon. But we get no kickbacks from anybody that we send attorneys to. It's very important for us to remain fiduciaries, to always act in the best interest of our clients and to make sure that we're putting them in the best position to retire without any other burdens. I mean, there's so many other things to worry about. There's so many other things going on. You don't want to have to worry about if your money is going to the right places or where to get your next paycheck. Right? If the market crashes, is that going to affect my way of living? Or when do I take Social Security? Or how do I minimize taxes? These are all the things that we focus on in our How to Retire Blueprint. Those are things that we help create for you. That way you have something, and it's something that we update every 6 months when you come in, as circumstances change, as your children end up moving back in with you, as you need to come up with another 10, 20, X amount of money, thousands of dollars for a wedding. Whatever that happens in life, we're here to help you figure that out. And that's why we're constantly meeting and reviewing plans, constantly adjusting things. But again, making sure that your investments and your taxes and your income are in line with your needs. We're happy to do all that for you. We do offer free consultations. We have offices in West Hartford and Middletown and Middlebury, Connecticut. And we also are happy to do an appointment by Zoom or by phone. So whatever works best for you, that will work for us. But we can't do anything unless you actually pick up the phone, give us a call, and let's figure out how we can help you live your best retirement.
It's an easy 800 number, 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985 to reach Fuchs Financial, 800-380-8985. And as Ben mentioned, 3 offices to choose from. And if you just want a meet and greet appointment on a Zoom call, he's happy to do that too. But 20 years investment experience and a fiduciary to boot. 800-380-8985, getting you to your retirement journey. Sometimes the hardest thing is just picking up the phone. We're going to talk about all these things next on How to Retire.
We believe in better. A better way to invest, a better way to serve you, and a better result. We can help you determine how much risk you're taking, red flags that could be potential problems for you, how much you are paying in fees or commissions, potential tax liability, or even how to address Social Security. Call Ben Fuchs at Fuchs Financial, proudly serving all of Connecticut. Call today, 800-380-8985. 800-380-8985.
In life, there are defining moments.
You may kiss the bride.
You got the job, buddy!
Retirement is one of those standout, exhilarating times. It's the start of a new chapter.
Carpe diem. Seize the day.
Starting off on the right foot is key. At Fuchs Financial, we make sure that you have the income to do everything you're looking forward to, whether that's trips to the beach with family, sightseeing, or sitting back, taking in fresh air and catching a fish or two. Our total retirement plan is comprehensive, custom tailored to your unique goals, and will give you direction on when you can retire with confidence. Meet at no cost with our local independent team who are here to help coach you along this journey. Call Ben Fuchs and the team at Fuchs Financial, proudly serving our Connecticut community at 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985.
Well, it's impossible to predict where the taxes are going to be at retirement, so don't worry too much. Oh, how do you feel about that, Ben?
Yeah, that's pretty bad advice. So one of the things that I think is really important for my clients to know and understand, well, first, most important thing is to not have any surprises in retirement. I think that's one of the biggest sources of frustration for clients is that they go into retirement and then all of a sudden they get hit with something they completely didn't expect. And we don't want taxes to be that thing. If you do not handle your taxes appropriately in retirement, before retirement, leading up to retirement, having a plan for what you will or will not do, you're going to be in trouble. And so when they say, don't worry about the taxes so much, that is what I would call bad advice. I get frustrated with financial advisors that call themselves retirement planners that cannot help somebody with their taxes. I feel like you're doing somebody a disservice because people need to understand the relationship between Social Security and withdrawals from a 401k or 403b, 457, IRA, whatever you have. You need to understand how those two things interact. And then you add on top of that things like capital gains and other pieces. And all of a sudden, it could force you to be taxed way more than you want to be. So what should you do? Great question. Thank you so much for asking. What you should be doing is you should be planning ahead. You should say, all right, if I'm going to retire in 2026, here's where I expect my income to come from. Show me what my taxes will be if this is my income. And then if I add other pieces to it, how will that change? What is the trajectory? What am I looking at? What if I take Social Security early? What if my spouse takes the Social Security early? What if we both wait? These things need to be decided ahead of time. That way you have a plan, because if you don't think about taxes ahead of time and you don't have a plan, well, then, the whole you're planning to fail thing. But I'm not going to be that drastic. I'm just going to say you're going to be paying way more money. I don't want my clients to pay more money than they need to. So in order to keep you from doing that, we need to have a plan.
You won't be spending as much in retirement as you do now. That is, oh boy, that is something that we think because we talked to Dr. Google.
Right. Well, Dr. Google is my least favorite thing. I've got a doctor friend of mine that was like, I just kind of Googled all my answers. Is that a big deal? I'm like, well, what if I just went to WebMD for all of my questions? Would that work? He's like, no, that would be awful. I'm like, exactly, man. It's the same thing. Because you're going down, you're going down one narrow road instead of seeing all the ways that these roads will branch and intersect and interact. And it's, you got to look at the whole map and not just one street. So issues. But going back to the terrible advice of you won't be spending as much in retirement as you do now, quite the opposite. We plan for our clients to actually spend more for the first couple of years in retirement. And when I say couple, I don't mean two. Usually I mean like 10. So let's say like the first decade in retirement, we're going to be doing more traveling. We're going to be doing more stuff. We're going to be spending more time in our house. The things that we could live with before are no longer comfortable. We need to get those fixed. So our goal is to make sure that you can live the lifestyle of retirement that you want to, not that you need to, or not that you're able to. You've worked for 30, 40, 50 years. You deserve to be able to do the things that you've wanted to and to live comfortably. For us, we want to make sure that you're able to do that, or at least if you're not able to do that, you know that ahead of time.
So what should we do? So again, we do what we call scenario-based retirement planning. So what that means is that we'll say, okay, if you retire next year, here's how much we think you can comfortably spend without running out based on a conservative rate of return. And we look into that and say, okay, if we spend an extra $10,000, $20,000 a year for a couple of years, what does that look like for you? How does that impact everything? And then we'll say, all right, if you retire in 2 years, if you retire in 3 years, if you take Social Security at 63 versus 64 versus 70, let's look at how all of these different things impact not only your income in retirement, but your investments in retirement and your taxes in retirement, and then the legacy that you'll have left over. So these are the things that we need to answer for our clients so that they're comfortable making these decisions. Again, assuming that you're not going to spend as much and not really creating a plan does a disservice to you. But creating concrete plans, knowing what your scenarios are, understanding how much you can comfortably spend without anxiety or heart palpitations, that's really what we want to accomplish. Here's the number, 800-380-8985 to reach Ben Fuchs, How to Retire. And he is the author of How to Retire Blueprint. It's scenario-based, as he just mentioned. And the number's 800-380-8985. And we are talking about your retirement. Here's one thing that needs to be dispelled. Social Security is enough to live off of in retirement. Did people come into your office and say that to you, Ben?
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way. So let me just clarify one thing, because we do get this a lot. People call them and say, well, I want the book. I want the How to Retire Blueprint book. And I say, I don't have one. You got to come in and we go through that together. We have 3 other advisors. We work together as a team to create these plans for our clients, to create these different scenarios. Every time we invest any money, that is done from a team perspective. But it is kind of a common idea that we have some. Don't get me wrong, I am writing a book. Someday you'll like it, hopefully. But I'm also not going to give it away. If you want it, you're going to have to buy it, because if I'm going to spend all that time writing something, I'm not giving it away on the radio. People, pick out your pocketbooks and buy my book. But We're not there yet. So if we come back to Social Security benefits and them being enough to live off of in retirement, it's a common misconception. And even if you're able to, and you save money, you could end up really, really hurting yourself from a tax perspective because you're delaying taking money from a 401k and letting that money build up in pre-tax accounts. And then when it comes time for required minimum distributions, the money that you must take, that you are required to take out at 73 or 75, depending on your age, all of a sudden you can be paying way more in taxes than you want to. So again, assuming Social Security is enough, typically not. Typically not enough. But we're here to help you figure that out.
Right. There is a big strategy involved in that. So what should we do? How do we optimize or maximize this?
So what a lot of people like to do is there's different software online that you can use to maximize your Social Security. There's different stuff that I've had previous firms that I've known that pay for these things. And I think all that is kind of nonsense because, there's no great secret. If you want to get the most money that you possibly can out of Social Security, you'd start taking it at 70, the most that you can get, and you live to, 120, you've gotten more money. But we don't know how long we're going to live. We don't know when that money's going to come. We also don't know the interaction. Some people want to take it at 62 so they can begin taking it right away. But again, we don't know what we're getting from a taxable benefit, right? What are we actually receiving after taxes, after possible penalties, if we're still working? The reason that we have people come in for the How to Retire Blueprint to figure out how they should retire so they can have these questions answered. That does not mean that you have to become a client of Fuchs Financial. Don't get me wrong. We're happy to have you, but that doesn't mean that that's our goal. And there are a lot of times when it isn't a good fit and we tell you that it doesn't make sense for you to be a client. But in that scenario, we want to go through the Social Security stuff and figure out when should you actually take it. And that's one of the things that our goal is to help answer for you when you come in and work with us.
Wonderful. And it looks like we're getting down to the wire here on this segment. And next, we will be getting around to your questions. So thank you, everybody, for reaching out.
Yeah, but there's one more thing that I think is interesting, because there's one more point that I think is bad retirement advice, and it's if you encounter an emergency, borrow from your retirement accounts. Now, this is a common thing, and people say, well, I've got a 401k, I can take a loan for myself, I'm not paying taxes on that, shouldn't I just do that? And it's bad advice, because the contributions that you put in to pay back that loan that would be going into your own 401k, they're not going into your 401k now. That money is now going in to pay back your loan. So you could actually be hurting yourself a lot, because all that money that would be saved for retirement is now going back to the loan, and you really need that retirement nest egg. And the younger you are taking a loan from your 401k retirement account, the more it will hurt you, because you are losing the benefit of all of that compound interest. Part of our goal is to find another way. Find a different place to take money from and maintain those 401k investments, especially in the early years, 20s, 30s, 40s, even when you have time for that money to compound. But I think at the end of the day, there's so many different pieces of retirement advice. There's so many things that are confusing for people. They're difficult to understand. Should I take a Roth conversion? Where do I take money from? How do I create a safety net? What actually makes sense for us, for me and my family? If I want to leave money behind to the next generation, what's the best way that we can do that? Should I have long-term care insurance? There are just questions that come up all the time. And I think the best way that we can do to help somebody is to have you come in for an appointment, or meet us online on Zoom, whatever works, or just set up a 15-minute phone call and say, hey, here's what I'm worried about. What should we do? And that does not mean that you have to become a client. We're here to give you a free consultation because we think we can help you. And that doesn't mean that you need to give us money. If you just walk around saying, we like those people over at Fuchs Financial, that's good enough for us. We're happy for that. We'll take it. But we can't do any of that unless you pick up the phone and give us a call. And a reminder, we have offices in West Hartford, in Middletown, and in Middlebury. We're also available by Zoom and phone calls, and we have clients all over the country. People that have started out in Connecticut and now are in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, California, you name it. We've got clients just about everywhere. So don't be afraid. If you're moving somewhere, we're probably able to help you what I would consider to be best, because if I wouldn't have a company with my name on it, if I thought anybody else could do this better than we could. So pick up the phone, give us a call, and we look forward to meeting you.
Very well. 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985 to reach the team at Fuchs Financial. And thank you so much for some questions trickling in. Ben, we're going to address the questions from the audience next.
Do you
you ever feel like you're fighting for financial knowledge? Don't let bad advice be a punch in the gut to your retirement. Take advantage of a complimentary, no-cost, no-obligation consultation with a local, trusted financial coach.
Call Ben Fuchs and the team at Fuchs Financial, 800-380-8985. That's 800-380-8985.
If you've ever had a house built, you know the actual construction can't start until there's a plan in place or a blueprint. The same is true for retirement. Before you can successfully retire, you have to have a plan. Let's call it a green print. Ben Fuchs at Fuchs Financial are helping people just like you build retirement plans with a green print that is unique to you. Call today for a no-cost consultation that will include a forensic fee analysis that will show you all the fees you're currently paying and some you may not even be aware of. It will also include a tax analysis to reveal how you could possibly reduce your taxes. They'll even run a customized income plan which could turbocharge your retirement. In short, they can help you take the guesswork out of financial planning. Call Ben Fuchs today at 800-380-8985. 800-380-8985.
Time to jump right in with the answers to your questions. The show is How to Retire with Ben Fuchs Financial, and How to Retire Blueprint. He has come up with this wonderful system to help you understand your retirement and what's going to happen at what time. Essentially, it's a scenario-based understanding of what's going to go on with your retirement. So let's go here to the audience. Ben, we have Ed in Essex. I'm not far away from retirement. How can I protect my 401k? Can I move some into cash and still have my employer match while contributing some money into it? And should I? Thanks, Ed.
All right, Ed, this is a loaded question, man. And I think that a lot of advisors would hear this question and be salivating, because that means we can throw you right into an annuity, we can walk away and call it. But the answer is, can you protect your 401k? It depends how close you are to retirement. So if you are over 59 and a half, typically that is the age, 59 and a half, when you can do something called an in-service rollover, where you can roll money out of your 401k, have it invested differently, and still be able to continue to contribute to that 401k and still get the employer match. So, you've got $1 million in the 401k. It doesn't have to be $1 million, but let's say you do. You take that whole $1 million out. You still contribute your $1,000 a paycheck into the 401k. You still get the employer match. You're just starting over with that money. Why would we do that? Great question, Ed. Thank you so much for asking. Because if the market goes down by 30%, we don't want your $1 million to turn into $700,000. Right? We don't want to take that 30% drop. We don't want to lose them, especially when you're getting close to retirement. So by moving it into an IRA, we now have more options that we can use to invest that money. We have a wider array of investment options. And so it's important for us to be able to kind of look at some of the different things that you can do in terms of safety. In a 401k, you typically only have one or two options. You typically only have a money market or a stable value fund, sometimes both. And, if you're in a TSP, a thrift savings plan, you're a government worker, you've got the G fund, you might be getting 3%, you might be getting 4 or 4.5%. But typically in an IRA, you have other options. You have things like fixed annuities where you can get 5.5%, 6% right now. And rates are subject to change. There are other things like fixed index annuities where you have the opportunity to make more and also make nothing. So there are different options out there. But one, it's important that just because you're getting close to retirement, we don't want everything to be safe. You will be doing yourself a disservice if at 60 years old, you make all of your money safe and you only get 3 to 6% a year, when sometimes the market will go up by 20 or 25. So what's important is to create a balance and have a plan where you have the money that you can generate for income in one bucket, the money that you need in case the market really crashes, that's your safety net, and then the money that you're not going to use for the next 5 to 10 years because you've taken care of the other two, that can be what you use to fight inflation, and that should be more in a growth style bucket. So when you put those things together, then you start to create a retirement plan, but that's totally customized and individualized based on the people that come in the door and talk to us, based on the income that they need from day to day. But that's what we can help you figure out.
Well, it's a good thing you're the expert. Here's the number, 800-380-8985, because Ed's question covered a lot of territory. 800-380-8985, Ed. If you'd like to reach out, anybody listening to the show, and talk to Ben Fuchs, the team at Fuchs Financial. All right. Here is Tim from Tolland. Tim says, besides qualifications and fiduciary status, what else do you recommend folks look at in an advisor? Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Well, I am a fiduciary and I do have a few qualifications, so I got to take those out when I answer your question. That's not fair, man. All right, anyway.
Come on.
We'll do it anyway. So what else do we recommend people look for in an advisor? This is really important because you want to find somebody, one, that does fit your philosophy. And as amazing as we are at Fuchs Financial, we're not going to pretend to fit everybody's philosophy. Some people really want heavy, explosive growth. They want to be in things like a hedge fund, things where they can get 25, 30% or more a year if that is kind of the goal. Our goal isn't to go for this explosive growth. We don't want people that are in their 20s and 30s and 40s taking massive amounts of risk. Typically, we like people in their 50s and 60s as they're approaching retirement, as they're 10, 5, 3 years away from retirement, giving us a call so that we can make a change in their investments. Why do we do that? Isn't all money the same? Great question. Thank you for asking. Where we live is to reduce volatility, take people off that roller coaster ride. Stop the heart palpitations. If we can get you a comfortable 8-ish% a year, help you retire comfortably, give you a place where the market crashes and you're okay, still give you exposure when the market goes up, but create a plan where you don't have to have those heart palpitations. That's important. So when we recommend things, I think it's recommending on what do they actually focus on? What do they do? And where is the majority of their business? You can be a retirement-based advisor and have 90% of your business be in things like annuities. Well, I don't want that if I'm not looking for an annuity. I want someone that does a lot of different things. So, and I don't have a problem with annuities, don't get me wrong. But I think you want an advisor that focuses on, what is your goal? If the answer to every question is an individual stock portfolio, like it is with some people, well, that might not make sense for you. I don't want to drive somebody into one lane. I want to hear what they have to say and figure out how we can best help them.
Very good. This is the number, Tim, so you can talk to the team at Fuchs Financial, 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985. All right. George has a question in Glastonbury. He says, I recently opened my first brokerage account, but I'm worried that I'll make some rookie mistakes. What are some common mistakes beginning investors like me make so I can be sure to avoid them? Thank you, George.
This is tough, man. You could kind of write a book on this. So first, if you're putting money into a brokerage account, which is great, you're either saving for something separate, like, kids' college or a house, or you are investing more money because you've maxed out your accounts. So one, I want to make sure that you're contributing as much as you can to your employer's Roth 401k if you're putting it into the brokerage account, because the brokerage account is also after tax. So if you have money going, you've already paid the taxes on that you're investing, you might as well get that money to grow tax-free for you. So put it in the employer's Roth 401k first. I think that's important. But it's also, getting too excited. Can't tell you how many people have had a friend tell them about this great idea and this great stock, and so they just overload too much money into it. Or there's this new style of coin that you buy, I don't know, Dogecoin, and they're all, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they don't make money, but you want to be careful on how exposed you are to some of these things that you don't have a lot of control of. And then again, we're making sure we're not putting money that we need. Right, we're not going to have to pay the mortgage with our brokerage account. A brokerage account is money that you're putting to be risk, to be in the stock market, and you don't want to invest anything that you plan to take out in the next 5 to 10 years. The whole concept of investing is that it's long term. You're not trying to day trade. If you go with the mindset of I'm going to buy low, I'm going to sell high, I'm going to get in and out on a day-to-day basis, you're likely going to fail. Warren Buffett, who has a pretty decent track record, says if you're not going to leave it in there for 10 years, don't buy it at all. So let that be your mindset when you put money in here. That being said, when you first get started, you typically want to do with the whole index style funds. You want to go with the indices, the S&P 500s, the Russell 2000s, the QQQ, the things that are going to be big technology funds that are going to spread your money around. And then as you build up more money in that account, once you've gotten $50,000, $100,000 in that account, then you want to start to move that from these mutual funds into individual stocks. Why? Great question, Jackie. Thanks again for asking.
Why?
So, because at some point when you put enough money in there, you're going to start paying capital gains on things that you haven't even sold. A lot of people that I've talked to, they had to pay taxes on their brokerage account in 2022, even though it went down by 20%. So in a scenario like that, mutual funds, they buy and sell stocks inside of them, and you don't have any control over that. So when they sell something inside the stock, you pay the taxes every year. So you could still lose money and still have to pay taxes, and nobody likes that scenario. So our job is to make sure that you're in the best position possible for that. So, once you get to a certain point, when you have a certain amount of money in that brokerage account, you want to start to transition toward individual stocks. But again, you probably want to work with somebody that can help you with that.
And George, this is the number to call Ben Fuchs, 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985. Here's Brandy in Bloomfield. I'm 62 and my retirement account is heavily invested in short-term investments. I plan to retire in 4 years, Ben. Is it an appropriate time to move some of it into stocks and bonds? Thank you, Brandy.
All right, Brandy, this is kind of tough. Glenn, I don't know you. I can't give you specific individualized information based on that question, but I can say as a general rule, I don't want all of anyone's money to be in any one thing. I don't want all of anyone's money to be safe. I don't want all of anyone's money to be in stocks and be aggressive for growth. I don't want all of anyone's money to be in bonds and generate income. What I want is to find the proper mix. And the proper mix isn't just about, it's about two things. It's about what you are comfortable with from a risk tolerance perspective, right? What can you tolerate in terms of comfort from a risk perspective? Because I don't want to put you in something where you're going to be checking it every day saying, why am I here? Because, stock market goes up and down and we know that we have to live with that. So that's one part. So risk tolerance is one part, and then risk capacity is the other. What is your capacity for risk? If you have an investment that goes down by 30, 35%, how does that impact your ability to make money? How does that impact your ability to pay your bills? These are all parts of the puzzle that we need to put together for you. So look, the reason that we offer a How to Retire Blueprint is because I think it's ridiculous to somebody to figure out all the stuff that they need to do for retirement on their own. If I have to go in for surgery on my arm, I'm not going to just research it ahead of time and grab my cousin and have him perform that with an X-Acto knife. That doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense. And you say, well, that's ridiculous. I agree. It is. And what do you think about, hey, I've saved my whole life for this money. I spent 30, 40, 50 years saving up this retirement, and I'm just going to do the whole thing on my own because I don't want to pay anybody else. That's okay. But you could be missing out on a lot and really, really hurting yourself. And what we found is that people have cost themselves a lot more money than they would have just paying somebody to help them manage it. So again, How to Retire Blueprint. What do we offer? We're here to help you figure out when you should take Social Security. When does it make the most sense for you? How do we generate a paycheck from your investments in your 401k so that you can live comfortably on a month-to-month basis and not worry about the market going up and down? 2, the right style of investments. How much risk and growth can you take? How much income? What's the safety net? What are we looking at there? And then taxes. We need to make sure that you're not paying too much in taxes, that you're getting the most out of your money, keeping the most of your money that we possibly can. And then, of course, the last piece is making sure that your money goes where you want it to when you're no longer here. So we need to put all of that together to create the right retirement blueprint for you. But we can't do any of that unless you pick up the phone and give us a call.
And the number is easy, 800 number. So it's 800-380-8985, 800-380-8985. To reach the team at Fuchs Financial, one more time, 800-380-8985. Ben, it's been a great show. Gary should be back next week. Appreciate your time on this.
All right. Thank you, Jackie.
Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, hereafter known as Foundations, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment, opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns is not indicative of future results. Any discussions of specific strategies are for informational purposes only and have been provided to help determine whether they may be appropriate for your specific situation. If applicable, the primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. Each individual investor situation is different, and ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. Nothing herein constitutes a recommendation that any security, portfolio of securities, or investment strategy is suitable for any person. No legal or tax advice is provided. Please review your retirement, tax, and legacy planning strategies with a legal or tax professional before transacting or implementing any strategy discussed herein. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to investment advisory products. Rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing insurance company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. This is not endorsed or affiliated with the Social Security Administration, any federal Medicare program, or any U.S. government agency. If applicable, we do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-MEDICARE to get information on all of your options. All rights reserved.